We will. I know we've got a few participants here today that were at my presentation yesterday. There is some content repeated, but I promise you there is also some new content. So we'll work our way through this. So what we're going to start with today is an overview of some of our programs and services. For anyone that lives within Johnson County, most of what I'm talking about today applies to you. It is different programs and services available to all residents and businesses within Johnson County, Kelowna, and Riverside. So we'll do an overview, then we'll delve into some solutions and ways for all of us to get involved in environmental protection. So resource management, this is our division name within the city of Iowa City that I work for, but it is also our approach to materials. We try not to look at things as waste. Of course, we can approach that for just strictly the landfill perspective. But if we're looking at composting or recycling and some of these other streams, we want to look at these materials as resources because that opens up all sorts of possibilities as to what other things we could be doing with these materials instead of just putting them to waste. So the three main areas that we cover within our division are curbside collections, drop-off recycling, and then the Iowa City landfill. So first, looking at curbside collections, for anyone on the line that lives in Iowa City in a single family home up through a fourplex apartment building, you are likely a curbside customer. So this is for trash collection, single stream recycling collection, and also composting for not only yard waste, but also food waste. All right, drop-off recycling. So we're going to spend several slides looking at our different drop-off options. The first thing I'll mention here is we do have a new website coming soon. I'll talk about this a little bit later in the presentation as well. But if anybody has had difficulty with our current website, you are not alone. There is some really great improvements coming very soon. Okay, so drop-offs. Let's look at the aerial view of Iowa City and Coralville. All the little location dots that you see on this map are where we have a variety of satellite locations for dropping off different types of materials for recycling. So on this map, and we'll go into each one of these, we've got our 3 recycling hubs: Eastside Recycling Center, South Riverside Recycling Center, and the Iowa City landfill. And then we also have a variety of drop-offs for special recyclable items, things that are recyclable, but not in the traditional way. We wouldn't want these items going in your curbside bin, for example. So items such as batteries, glass, and light bulbs. So the Eastside Recycling Center, this is located on Scott Boulevard on the east side of town, same location as where the Habitat for Humanity Restore is located. And this site has a number of recycling options that are 24/7. They're out in the parking lot area. You can access them at any time. Those include cardboard, paper, glass, plastic, metal, wine corks, vegetable and motor oil. And then on site, we also have our electronic and small appliance recycling program and light bulb recycling that are housed through Restore donations. So those are not 24/7. Those programs are per Restore's hours, which right now are Wednesday to Saturday, 9 to 4:30. So you'd go right up to the donations door like you're going to donate something, let them know you've got this item to recycle. They can take it from there. At the site, we also have compost and wood chips pickup. Now note, the bins are not back yet. We do pull them in wintertime because the material typically freezes to the bins, but we do bring them back in the spring. They should be back in the next few weeks for compost and wood chips pickup, and then they stay spring, summer, and fall. All right, South Riverside Recycling Center. This is located on South Riverside off of Highway 6 there, kind of across from the Arby's and Starbucks on the south side. And this is not quite as many recycling options here, but this is a 24/7 site for the basic materials. So your cardboard, paper, glass, metal, and plastic for this site. Okay. Before we delve into the landfill, let's look at those special recyclables. So I mentioned we've got a number of different recycling locations for light bulbs, for batteries, and for glass. So these are items, as I said, that we don't want going in our curbside recycling bin. We also don't want them going in the trash. So we realize that it is a little bit extra effort to get these to the right place. So that's why we've worked really hard to expand the number of drop-off locations, make it easier for all of us to participate in these programs. Now, I want all of us to focus on that center column for batteries. We see a number of drop-offs there, anything from the landfill for hazardous material, which we'll talk about that in a bit here, the fire station on the west side, so off of Emerald Street, across from the Finkbine entrance for the golf course, both Ace Hardware's, City Hall, and then Coralville and North Liberty, their community recreation centers as well. So this is a recent development in the last 2 years that we've expanded our battery recycling program. Not only for locations, but also we've expanded the accepted items list. So we've taken it from saying, oh, we'll accept rechargeable batteries, but not alkaline, to now saying we will take any and all of your batteries. The reason being, the motivation behind that is this. So this image is of a variety of damaged batteries. All of the pictures that you're looking at here are not stock photos. These are actual photos from our Iowa City landfill that either our landfill operators have taken themselves and sent me the photos, or our landfill operators have brought the batteries up to me for me to photograph. So again, 4 out of the 5 that you're looking at here are charred, burnt batteries that started fires at our landfill. The one in the upper left-hand corner, this is a battery that luckily did not catch on fire, but you can see that it's damaged. And how you know is you see a little bit of swelling there. So typically what we look for, if you're wondering if a battery you have is damaged and if you should stop using it, look for things like corrosion, leaking, swelling, or burnt spots. Okay, so that's a good example of what a swollen battery looks like. Now, what's the scenario here? Why is this happening? Well, we have any batteries that would end up in the trash and eventually enter the landfill, where we would have our compactors, our dozers running over that garbage to tear it up and compact it, put it efficiently in place to maximize that landfill space. Whenever we do that, and if a battery happens to be in the mix, we're running over it with equipment. If it gets damaged, it sparks and starts a fire, which is a very dangerous situation, not only for operations, not only for our equipment and our staff, but also you've got a hazardous material that's burning. So it's releasing hazardous items into the environment, into the air, just a bad situation overall, one that we greatly want to avoid. So this is really what launched the battery expansion that we have, with the number of drop-off locations, and then also having the rule that you can bring us any and all batteries that you have. Okay, Iowa City landfill. So this is our 3rd big recycling hub. There's also a lot else going on here. So this is on the west side of town. The physical address is Hebel Avenue, and all information that you need is icgov.org/landfill. So if you end up going out to the landfill, this is what the actual hole looks like where our garbage is going. So this is what we call an active cell. It's our engineered hole in the ground that is built to hold garbage. Now, this might not look like much, but there is a lot of engineering, urban planning, and consulting work that goes into building this hole in the most environmentally safe way to prevent issues, to prevent needing to do environmental mitigation, because we want to do it right from the start. So for anyone interested in learning more about landfilling in Iowa City, this is a video that we created within Iowa City. So it is per our landfill. It's not a generic video. How does a landfill work? If you go to YouTube, you could type that in, learn everything you need to know about what we're doing locally for landfilling. Also out at the Iowa City landfill site, we've got our hazardous material collection facility, and this is available to any residents in Johnson County at no cost. So you can come during our regular facility hours, which are Thursday, Friday, or Saturday from 7 to 2. And again, it's no cost to drop off materials during that time frame. We always have a staff member in there ready to assist anyone that pulls up with different hazardous items. So we may be asking, what is hazardous? What are hazardous items? This scratches the surface, but gives a good representation of some different items that are common that we get at this facility. So things like light bulbs, of course, oil-based stains and paints, aerosols, lawn care items, fertilizers, and then a variety of different types of cleaners as well. I'll also say there's a lot of other hazardous items beyond what we're seeing on this slide. So if any residents are ever curious if something is considered hazardous, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to talk through that. And if it's not hazardous, we can certainly find another disposal option for you. Okay. Compost facility. So this is also another facility that we have located out at the Iowa City landfill. What you're looking at here, the upper left-hand corner, this is our woody yard waste pile. So we pull from this pile, process it into wood chip mulch, that photo you see in the upper right. Lower left, this is our yard waste and food waste pile. A lot of this comes from our curbside compost trucks. This gets pulled and processed into community compost that we see in the lower right there. What types of items can we put in our compost bin? Well, this is a general image of a lot of different types of things we can accept. So lots of different yard waste, lots of different food waste. One really cool thing about our program that is very different than a backyard compost system is that we can accept some of those food waste items that are usually considered harder to compost. So things like meat bones, dairy, oils, grease. Those types of things we can accept through this system because our piles reach a hot enough temperature. Again, we wouldn't recommend that for a backyard pile though, because it's difficult for a backyard pile to reach a hot enough temperature to really break those items down. No problem within this facility though. So quick overview of what we're doing at the compost facility. From start to finish, the process in general takes about a year. So we saw that initial yard waste, food waste pile that we pull from. We grab that material, feed it through a grinder, which shoots out evenly sized pieces. From there, the piles then that we form from that, torn up material from the grinder, we form those into long rows called windrows. Turn those piles once per month. That helps to regulate the temperature, incorporate some oxygen. The one very important rule that we have to follow during this year of processing is we have to maintain a temperature of at least 132 degrees for a 2-week period. Now, the reason for that is we want to kill off any harmful pathogens, harmful bacteria. It also makes it so we can confidently tell you that your garlic mustard that may have entered the compost pile is not going to germinate in that finished compost product, that we have successfully killed off any of those seeds or plants, so you're not at risk of that entering your yard or garden. Love Food Fight Waste. So this is a program that we launched about a year ago. We're actually reaching the 1-year anniversary in April. And this is a program that was built from City of Iowa City and Table to Table, our local food rescue organization, a collaboration between those two organizations with a goal to launch a program with a lot of low barrier, approachable tips and solutions for food waste reduction. We also talk about other things, composting, local food, local resources around this topic. So if you are interested in learning about any of that, please visit this website. Currently, the promotion we have for March is local food. Next month, we're talking about the food waste profile in Johnson County, but any of the past promotions we've done, whether it be food storage, freezing food, shopping tips, holiday waste, lots of different topics. We've got all of those archived on this website as well. All right, still talking about the landfill, recycling opportunities out at that site. So this is really considered our mother site in terms of having all of the programs that we represent. As we've seen, we've got lots of satellite locations, but this is really where all of them are located. Anything from appliances to electronics, books, scrap metal, tires, light bulbs, motor oil, vegetable oil. And then, of course, the basic recyclables, we've got bins for those too: plastic, glass, cardboard, paper, and metal. If you've not been out to the landfill, this is the layout. If you are coming out with multiple materials, let's say you've got a television and some light bulbs and some hazardous material and some food waste and some glass, you're going to stop at several different locations on this property. If you've not been to the landfill before and you visit, please feel free to ask staff if you're not sure where you're going or where to dispose of something. The scale house window, which is lane 2, that is a great place to start to ask those questions. We also have, if you want some orientation before visiting, we have a landfill video on our main landfill website, so icgov.org/landfill, and we can put that in the chat as well. But that just has a really good orientation of wayfinding, where to go for certain materials. Again, if you've never visited the landfill, that's quite helpful. Okay, what cannot go into the trash? So in 1989, there was an act passed in the state of Iowa called the Iowa Waste Reduction and Recycling Act. So this made it so appliances, tires, lead acid batteries, yard waste, and oil were legally not allowed to go into the landfill at any landfill across the state of Iowa. And that's what a landfill ban is. It basically says you can't put it in the trash. You need to divert it through other programs. And depending on the material, that could be a hazardous material program, that could be composting, that could be recycling. It varies depending on what material we're talking about. Now, in addition to those 5 bans, Iowa City specifically added 2 additional bans for TVs and computers and also for cardboard. Now, the reason for that is we looked at both of these material categories and said, we've got great recycling programs for these. It just doesn't make sense to put these in the trash. So that really was the motivation for those 2 additional bans of cardboard and then the electronics, the TVs and computer monitors. All right, landfill breakdown. So we are lucky every about 5 years to participate in the Iowa DNR's waste characterization study. And what this is essentially we pull several garbage trucks aside from several different parts of the community, a mix of industry, commercial, and residential. We sort through all the garbage and we figure out exactly what's going into the landfill. Really awesome data set in terms of the work that we do, because we can look at numbers from 2012, 2017, 2022, and see how things are trending, what programs are going well, what materials need a little bit more focus in terms of reduction or diversion. So based off of that data, which this study took place May, June of last year, so very recent data, 18% of what is going in the landfill is paper. 24% of what's going in the landfill is organics, 14% is plastic, 5% is metal, 2% is glass, and then we've got some other smaller categories as well. Now, overall, for food waste, because I know this is a big topic, of everything going in the landfill, about 20% of what's going in the landfill right now is food waste. Now, that sounds like a lot. It is. But I do have good news. Since our 2017 study, we've reduced food waste by about 5%. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that is thousands and thousands of tons of materials. So pat on the back, Iowa City and Johnson County, that's a really significant difference. And we're excited to see with future studies, hoping that we can continue to trend that down. All right, so let's before we really head over to the solutions part of this presentation, let's spend several slides talking about plastics here, because this is one of the categories that I definitely get a lot of questions from our community on. So just a quick overview here. What is the situation with plastics? Well, in manufacturing, when plastics are made, there is a very complex chemistry involved. Not only is it complex, but there are several different versions of chemistry that they use to manufacture plastics. So because of that situation, it makes recycling challenging. It also makes recycling pretty limited for plastics. Most plastics that we interact with currently are not recyclable within our recycling programs. Now, I know that can be a shocking statement, but I also want us to consider all the other things that plastics are a part of. I look at my computer in front of me and the keyboard and the mouse and my phone, my window, the blinds, everything. Plastic is incorporated in so many things. A lot of the things that it's incorporated into were not really meant to be recycled. They were meant to be durable, like this computer, used for a very long time. In some cases, some of that plastic can be recycled. But the category that we are talking about for plastic that can be recycled is fairly limited to bottles and jugs, which we'll talk about in a minute here. Before we do, though, recyclability of plastic in general. So very different than a metal can or a glass bottle. Plastic that is considered recyclable. So we could talk about something like a plastic water bottle. Even something we would consider recyclable, like a plastic water bottle, can only be recycled about 1 to 3 times before those chemical polymers are too short to recycle again. Very different, like I said, than glass or metal, materials that are infinitely recyclable forever and ever. You don't need to add any more materials in. They don't lose quality. They don't lose purity. Just a totally different scenario than what we're talking about with plastic. However, like I said, there are still some plastics that do have recyclability. And if we're using them, let's recycle them. Let's certainly continue to use those materials as long as we possibly can. So all the pictures that you're seeing on the screen right now, these are all types of plastics that we can accept via recycling. Now, if you notice, there's a theme. Very much within the bottles and jugs category. It's for a lot of consumer products that we buy and use fairly quickly and then go buy another one, like a milk jug or shampoo bottle, medicine bottles, those types of things. So think within this application if we're talking about what we can recycle for plastics. Few tips here: rinse your bottles and jugs first before putting them in recycling. Remove any pumps. Those are not recyclable. So when I say pumps, I mean things like soap bottles or lotion bottles. And if a container has a cap, such as a milk jug or a laundry detergent bottle, feel free to leave that cap screwed on to the bottle or the jug. Of course, if we are not sure if an item can be recycled, don't recycle it. Don't put it in the bin if you're not sure. Or check your local program or ask me. I'm happy to answer those questions. All right, so now what plastic cannot be recycled? Again, as I said, really most of it. So when we think of plastics and we're wondering what can I recycle, it is easier to stick to the category of what we know can be recycled than the vast ocean of the what ifs of all the other types of plastic. So you can see here, there's a large variety of stuff on this screen. Anything from, yard signs to chemical bottles like motor oil, fertilizer bottles, syringes, obviously, that does have a disposal program, but not through your curbside bin. Lots of different types of plastic film or wrap or bags. Keep in mind, for some very specific cases, and we'll talk about this even when we delve a little bit more into contamination, there are some exceptions with what we list as common contaminants for a curbside program. Like what we talked about with batteries, light bulbs, and glass, there are some specialized programs, so we can talk through what those exceptions are as well. The other thing I want to point out in this slide is the lower right-hand corner, that sort of black tub that you see. That is meant to represent bulky plastic. So that could be a plastic garbage can that broke. That could be a plastic lawn chair that broke. Anything that we would put in the large, bulky odds and ends category of plastic, even if you're seeing a recycling symbol on it, it's not something that would be accepted through current recycling programs. All right, clamshells. Lots of questions on clamshells. So let's dive into this a little bit. Why can we not currently put clamshells in recycling? Well, the simple answer for that is that they are molded in such a way during the manufacturing process that makes them very recycling unfriendly. It makes them a fairly low quality, brittle plastic, and they are just heat resistant. They respond differently to melting than what we would consider a very recyclable plastic, like a plastic water bottle. Now, we, on a frequent basis, talk to our sorting facility. They, on a frequent basis, reach out to their plastic mills as well. The understanding that we have is that plastic mills, and there's a variety of different companies, and some of them communicate this differently. So that is also important to keep in mind. But plastic mills usually will allow a small threshold of clamshells into the plastics recycling process. But the statement that we've gotten is that too many can degrade the quality of the plastic mix and can really cause some pretty severe issues with quality, which to me says contamination. If I hear that answer, that says contamination. So as I stated previously, clamshells are typically a low quality, fairly complicated type of plastic that is viewed as contamination. So that is the situation right now with them. If that message at some point changes, if they find a new innovative way to process this type of plastic, of course, we will change our program guidelines. And I think that's an important note here when we're talking about recycling programs. We oftentimes think of them as something that is permanent and stable, and it's a program that you're going to have in every community. And although staff work hard to make it look and seem that way from the public view, behind the scenes, it's an ebb and flow economic system where things can change often, including because, it's very much dependent on pricing and companies available to accept these materials. That also means that our accepted items list can change. So like I said, we talk to our sorting facility often to see if there are any changes, but this is the status as of right now. All right, so what is the solution for plastics? The number one solution I can share with you is to reduce our use of plastic. Recycling in this case is not the solution for the plastics issue, because as we've talked about, plastics were not designed to be continuously recycled. They've got a very limited recyclability. So best solution here is to reduce use of disposable plastics and to look for sustainable, reusable alternatives. Okay, so we'll talk through some of these. I want us to, on a regular basis, and it could be the simplest thing that we do every single day, consider our habits and behaviors. Are there small changes that we can make to reduce our plastic use? So let's talk through a few of these for any of us that are interested in trying to reduce exposure or use of plastic. Here are some things that we can do. Joan talks to me a lot about drinking straws. So Joan, this one's for you. I put this top of the list. So with drinking straws, if we think about, this small little thing of plastic, it doesn't look like much. Well, if we think of how often we are served straws and the quantity served at restaurants per day, all over our community, all over other towns, all over the country, it's a lot of straws. So this, along with all the other examples, these are little habits that we can change to make a pretty big difference over time. So if we think of drinking straws, my recommendation there, you can always drink the beverage without a straw. Okay, that is an option. If you like having a straw, there are some really great paper varieties out there, or there's reusable options. At home, I've got metal straws. I personally love them. They work great. It even comes with a little cleaner. So, they're super easy to clean and maintain and continue to use. BYOB. So this can be bring your own bags. This could be bring your own bottles. And again, doesn't seem like much. You've got one plastic bag today or one disposable plastic water bottle today. The reason we bring up these tips is because they are small, little things we can do with activities and behaviors and habits that we do all the time. We're at a store probably multiple times a week. We're drinking water multiple times a day. So every time you choose to shift to do something that is reusable, or to do something that is more sustainable, or to choose something that's not plastic, because we're doing these things so often, they do make a really big difference over time. If we're buying produce and we want to avoid plastic film, plastic bags, one thing that you can do is look for fresh produce. There's also reusable produce bags that you can get if you do like to put it in something. This is one that I am slowly building the habit for, bringing my own container to restaurants. Sometimes it's easy to forget. Gotten really good with the reusable bag one, bringing it to the store, but next step for me is remembering to bring that reusable container. It's great, especially if you're going to a restaurant, you don't know if they have clamshells or styrofoam or compostable. You don't know what their takeout situation is. The easiest thing you can do, bring your own container. Shampoo and conditioner bars. So this is something that I think is actually becoming more and more popular. I use this in my own household. I think they work great. The goal with this, again, typically shampoo and conditioner is packaged in plastic bottles. This is a great way to avoid that. A lot of the bars for shampoo and conditioner are packaged in completely paper-based packaging as well. So you are 100% reducing plastic use in this area of your house if you choose to switch to bars. Laundry detergent sheets. Here's another example. Typically packaged in plastic bottles or containers for laundry detergent. The sheets are usually packaged in just a little paper box. It's a nice little compact thing, lasts a very long time. I use these at home. I think they work great. Now, again, scratching the surface here, there are a ton of examples we could share on ways to reduce, on ways to come up with alternatives. Anytime anybody has questions about this, again, we can have that conversation. We can look for alternatives together. I always feel like a lot of what I end up learning for my job is from our community members. So if anybody has questions on that, please feel free to reach out. Okay, let's transition now over to the solutions discussion. So resource management, you've heard me say that a few times. That is the name of our division. That is how we deal with materials. So far in this presentation, we've really focused on number 3 here, recycle, compost, trash. Interestingly, though, this is the last thing that I want you to do. The reason we focus so much on it in the presentation is because the way our society is run, we need these systems. And also for these systems to work successfully and correctly, we need participants to use them the right way. So that's why we do spend so much time talking about these systems, because we want them to be successful. We want you to use them and participate in them. However, if we're looking at environmental impact, the number one thing that you can do, first priority, reduce waste. Look at how you can avoid creating waste in the first place. Second thing, reuse, repair, upcycle when and where possible. Now, when those things are not possible, or you've done all you can to reduce, reuse, repair, upcycle, that is when we want to consider recycling, composting, and trash. And that's why those systems exist. We need them. Now, let's look at what are some things, how can we make a difference? Part of this is definitely bringing awareness to what we're doing as consumers, to our consumption behaviors, and then moving forward with that knowledge to change our habits and behaviors, and sometimes in some very simple, low barrier ways. Okay, starting with 2 big tips here. Number 1, assume that every community has different programs with unique guidelines. This is especially true for recycling programs. So if you don't live in Iowa City, let's say you live in Tiffin or West Branch or Cedar Rapids, check with your local municipality on what the recycling program is and how to use it, what the accepted materials lists are. The reason being is there are a lot of variations, and recycling is very localized. So even a town 5 miles down the road could have different guidelines or a slightly different accepted materials list. So check your program before participating. Second tip, don't wish cycle. Wish cycling is when we put something in a recycling bin that we're not totally sure if it can be recycled, but we're really hopeful that it's going to end up somewhere where they can do something with it. Even if it's a bike helmet or a garden hose or a teddy bear, as you see on the screen here. I fully understand that thought. I appreciate it. I've had it myself, but we really, really encourage you to resist putting these types of items in the recycling bin. They cause a lot of operational hazards, not only to our staff, to our trucks, to the sorting facility that it eventually ends up to, but it can also cause some pretty serious safety issues for things like propane tanks, batteries, the garden hoses, plastic bags, things that can start a fire, things that can get caught in equipment, and we have staff that have to climb in to a dangerous situation and pull those materials out. So just best to, again, follow those guidelines. Don't put anything in that bin that shouldn't be there. Why am I emphasizing these tips so much? Well, both of these do a great job at reducing contamination. So contamination is any item in a recycling bin that is not supposed to be there. It's not on the accepted items list. So let's look at a few more examples of what that might be. As said, they cause safety operational hazards. The other big concern here too is if there is too much contamination in a recycling load, it can jeopardize the entire load. So keep these items out to ensure that your clean, recyclable items actually successfully get recycled. That's an important thing to note. Now, all the things that you see on the screen here are things that we would consider contamination through curbside recycling. And I say curbside specifically because some of these may be an exception for some specialized programs. If we look at the propane tank, we definitely don't want that in curbside recycling. That can cause all sorts of safety issues. But we do have a program for propane and helium tanks out at the landfill through our appliance recycling. You can recycle a tank for $1 out there. Aerosols, that can be recycled through our hazardous material collection facility. And then some of these other items, there is a reason why we have a landfill. Some things, there's just not a way to recover material right now. If we look at like the garden hose or the teddy bear or the metallic wrapping paper, there's not a way to recover that material right now. And so in that case, the best place for that is the landfill. Okay. Upstream versus downstream. So this is a concept that we like to look at when we're talking about a product's life. So if we look at, we'll say my cell phone here. So the downstream of this cell phone, let's say that it breaks, is what do I do with it now that it's broken and I'm done with it? Do I put it in the trash? Do I recycle it? Do I compost it? I think based off of what we've learned today, please do not put it in the trash. And please do not put it in the compost. There is a specialized recycling program for this. We look at the upstream. What are all the things that this cell phone went through to get to me, the consumer, to show up at Verizon or US Cellular or any other cell phone provider and purchase it? So that is looking at all the energy, the water, the transportation, the machinery, manpower, all the natural resources that went into making this product. Now, I want us to think about these things because it helps us realize, wow, the stuff that we buy has a lot of embedded environmental impact before we even show up at the store to purchase it. So the biggest impact is not the downstream. It's not, what do I do with it when I'm done with it? It is all the complicated resource-intensive systems that happen in the upstream we don't even often know about because all we see is the interface at the store when we're actually making the purchase as a consumer. So being aware of the upstream is meant to make us wiser consumers. Talking a little bit more about this cell phone example. So what we see on this map here, these are all the different locations where we might have to derive or harvest ingredients to engineer and manufacture a cell phone. Now, I said this yesterday in my presentation, I'll say it again. I love traveling. I consider myself pretty well traveled, but my cell phone has definitely been to more places than me in looking at this map, okay? All over the world. This is a global device. So what does that mean? Let's consider, where do those materials originate? There's some plastic in my phone, so that's petroleum, that's from oil. There's a lot of rare earth metals and minerals that need to be mined. How are those materials mined? Who's mining those metals and minerals and other materials? Who's manufacturing the phone? And how are the working conditions? How are those workers treated? Now, again, looking back at this map, we definitely have rules, regulations, guidelines within the United States to protect workers in terms of fair wages, in terms of safety conditions, right? Health conditions, all sorts of things. There's a lot of other countries that don't have those same rules. And as we can see here, we've got different ingredients from our phones that are coming from all over the world, and potentially some locations that don't have that same protection for workers. So the reality that we're facing here, consumption of cell phones and other electronics continues to increase. And we know this because we manage an electronic recycling program where we can show you the increase in tonnage we have seen over the last few decades. So this continues to increase despite the associated heavy environmental impacts and environmental injustices upstream and downstream. So what is the solution here? We've been talking about cell phones, but the solution applies to any and all products that we're purchasing. Be smart about the products that we buy, what they're made of, how they were made, who made them. Consumer choice. We are all consumers. Vote with your purchases. So that means that when you walk into the store and you choose to buy something, that sends a message up the economic chain that, oh, the consumers demand this product. And that also goes for if you go to a store and choose to buy something that has recycled content in it, or is recyclable, or is local ingredients, organic, fair trade, Rainforest Alliance, lots of different versions of what that could look like. And we'll talk about labels in a minute here too. But you choose to buy a product like that, that also sends a message up the economic chain that that's where you put your money. You put your money towards a product that is environmentally conscious, and that is what consumers demand. That certainly speaks. So keep that in mind. This is a big part of the solution that can be quite powerful coming from consumers. I also encourage, just because overconsumption is often something that is talked about, I also encourage you to think about, do I need it? So ask yourself, you're at the store, you're looking at something, do I need it? Why am I buying this? Am I overconsuming? Greenwashing. We hear this word a lot. What does it mean? Well, greenwashing is a product or service that is promoted as being more eco-friendly than it really is. And eco-friendly can mean a lot of different things. It could be referring to being recyclable, or if it's saving water or reducing energy use, is locally made, lots of different versions of what that could mean. So within this system of wondering if some products on the shelf are greenwashed or if they're legitimate, I think it's important to remember that we are consumers, we are all consumers, and that's okay. I, of course, want us to be conscious of how much we're consuming, try to avoid that over-consuming, but I do want to emphasize it is okay that we are consumers. We have to be within the world that we live in, even if it's just for the basics, the essentials like medicine, food, toothpaste, contact fluid, whatever that may be in your own household that you would consider essential. So within those products that we do continuously have to buy, let's be curious about what we're interacting with as consumers. So I encourage you to read product labels, look into those certifications that our products claim to follow. Now, in terms of some of those certifications or labels that we might be seeing, here are a few that are what we consider trusted labels. So USDA organic, if you're talking about food, this means that it is organic, free of pesticides, fertilizers, genetically modified organisms. Rainforest Alliance, this is something we see on a lot of food items as well. Some other products too, but especially popular for things like bananas, coffee, chocolate. So this ensures that there is sustainable forestry and also offers some environmental protection for forest environments too. U.S. Composting Council, or BPI. So BPI stands for Biodegradable Products Institute. So these two certifications are things that we would want you to look for if you are wanting to get a compostable dishware item. Let's say you're hosting an event, you want it to be 100% compostable, and you want to have compostable plates and cups to serve with. This is the certification that you would want to look for to ensure that it can successfully be composted. Typically, the standard that they're measuring by is at an industrial compost facility. A lot of things that are produced for dishware that are termed compostable wouldn't necessarily do that well in a backyard pile. But if you see that it says 100% compostable with these labels, that means that we can accept it out at our industrial facility located at the landfill. The how to recycle label. So that is the image that I have up on the screen. That is a label that is showing up on more and more products, which I'm thrilled about because it is a label we can trust. It's got the recycling chasing arrow symbol that we all recognize. And then it usually offers a little bit of guidance on what you can do with the product. So here it's talking about a plastic bottle. It's saying empty it and replace the lid. So keep that cap attached. Cradle to cradle, we don't see this one quite as often, but if you do, what it means is that they are taking into account all the environmental impact, all the way from upstream manufacturing, all the way to downstream disposal. Labels to questions. So some of these may be quite shocking, including the chasing arrow symbol, the classic recycling symbol. Although this looks great, we love this symbol, at the manufacturing level, there is no guidelines, no requirements for a company if they put this label on their product. They don't need to ensure that the community that it ends up in can actually get it recycled. It doesn't mean anything, unfortunately. We all love this symbol though, so we know why it oftentimes gets stamped on products that we buy. With this one, to ensure that, again, you're not putting things in the recycling bin that should not be there, my recommendation is to always check with your local program on guidelines. Make sure you know what the accepted items are. Even if you're seeing a recycling symbol on something, confirm it with your local program first. Plastic neutral, this is a fairly new one that was brought to my attention in the last few months. This has to do with companies that are associated with plastics purchasing credits. And these credits help with cleanup efforts or litter removal, different things, which is not all bad. You know, there's definitely some good in that, but it's not getting to the root of the plastics issue and it's not focused on reduction. Any words that we see in the category of natural, eco-friendly, sustainable, zero waste, again, similar to the recycling symbol, these sound great, these look great, but there's no backing in terms of guidelines or any requirements that they need to follow to put this word on their product. There, of course, are products out there that say sustainable and they are legitimately sustainable, but not all of them. There's no requirement with it. So always look a little bit further on that packaging if you're seeing these words. Biodegradable. So that is not a word that qualifies something to be composted. Biodegradable in some cases, again, if it doesn't have that US Composting Council or BPI stamp on it, if you just see biodegradable, in some cases that can mean that if we're looking at a fork, for example, there may be some plant-based components, but there's also some plastic components to that, which are not compatible materials. So that means that because there's the plant-based, you can't put it in the recycling bin. And because there's the plastic, you can't put it in compost, which means you have to put it in the regular trash. And because there's the plant-based components, what ends up happening is that contributes to methane in a landfill environment because organic materials help to fuel methane production in a landfill. So not a good situation there. My recommendation is just to avoid things that just say vaguely biodegradable. TerraCycle, this is one that we see on a lot of products that we usually consider not recyclable or hard to recycle. Things like candy bar wrappers, chip bags, toothpaste tubes, disposable razors, toothbrushes, those types of things. They've got a number of zero waste boxes where you can collect these items, send them into TerraCycle, and it is promoted that they can recycle these items. Bye, Joe. And with that, again, I think there's some good within this system. I think they're doing a lot of research and there may be some recovery. However, the reason that we put this on the labels to question list is we are not getting a clear enough answer on what's happening to those materials. And anytime there's not complete transparency on if a company is accepting a material and they're not telling you clearly what that product is being recovered or recycled into, that usually puts up our red flag. So that's the reasoning behind this. Now, this is just a few of many labels. So if you're not sure, if you see a label and you've not seen it before, You don't know if this is something that you can trust in terms of what it's claiming. Research the label, look into it, check your local program or ask. That is certainly what I am here to be a resource for. Upcoming events. So I did want to highlight a few things that we have coming up. For anybody that has uses medical syringes or has medications that are unused or expired, we will be having a drug take back day event on Earth Day, so April 22nd at the Eastside Recycling Center. More information coming out about that soon. For anyone that has participated in our Speaking of program in the past, this is a program that Sarah Gardner, our climate action coordinator, and I started about, oh gosh, year and a half ago at this point. It's been fully virtual webinar based up until this point. Next month in late April, we will be doing an in-person Speaking of event at Big Grove Brewery. We're still working out the details for that, but the topic that we are looking at is actually plastics. So if you are interested in that, we'd love to have you attend. Again, in person, late April, more information coming out about that soon. We're hosting a book repair event in May. This is a collaboration with Antelope Lending Library. And this is an opportunity to look at that number 2 on the resource management list, the reuse, repair, upcycle. So I'm sure all of us have some books that really mean a lot to us. And if they're worn, if they're damaged, and they need some repair, this event is for you. So again, working out those details with Antelope, more info coming out soon on that. The diversity market is happening in July and August this year over at Pepperwood Plaza. We're working with the market to get an eco station started for this year's market. So every single week during the market, there will be an eco station. We're going to be working with a variety of different local groups and individuals with different activities and things all related around reuse, repair, waste reduction in general. And then looking forward to summer move out when we've got a big lease turnover at the end of July, start of August. We always try to have some move out programming. So what we're hosting this year is donation drive-through, which is scheduled for July 23rd. And this will offer a variety of different donation and recycling opportunities for residents. And it's meant to be a convenient drive-through format. Lots of volunteers can help unload stuff. It's anything from furniture to mattresses, light bulbs, books, batteries, food, clothing, a whole range of items. So again, more information coming out soon on that. Some updates on programs and things to come. So we did just complete a variety of translated guides. So we've got some of our most utilized handouts, such as our moving guide, our hazardous material guide, our curbside guides. We now have them translated into not only English, but French, Spanish, and Arabic. So if you or you know of anybody or a group or organization that could benefit from these translated guides, please reach out to me or put me in contact with that contact, and I can certainly get that information and resources over to them. I mentioned we've got the new city website launching. So what that means is that the website that you have known for the last 10 or 15 years will be transitioning to a brand new platform in just a few weeks. I mentioned earlier, I'm very excited about it. It's going to be a much better communication tool than we have now. I fully recognize the current website has some navigation issues, and this will vastly improve navigation experience for our users. And as we know, it can be challenging to display so much information for a municipal government. I think this website does it very well. So excited for that to be a resource coming very soon. Love Food, Fight Waste. So we are hitting our 1-year anniversary of this program next month. We're looking at sort of this isn't the public name of it, but what we're calling it in our planning group is the 2.0 of Love Food, Fight Waste. So what it's going to look like for this next year, how we are going to continue to use some of the content that we've built up in creative ways. So more to come, especially in May, by May for that. Regarding plastics, so we've got a few things going on through our environmental management system program, which is our version of comprehensive planning for the Iowa City landfill. We have a program going to help curb contamination, reduce contamination within plastics recycling. So as we've talked about, there are a variety of plastics that we can accept through plastics recycling. However, if we've got a lot of other items in there that are not supposed to be there, it makes it difficult to recycle the plastic that actually is recyclable. So this program is meant to reduce that contamination. We've kicked off that program. I've done the pre-outreach visual inspection, which was a very interesting process for a week of sort of sorting through the plastics bin at Eastside Recycling Center. What we're doing now is we're building an education program around our findings of that. So more to come with that very soon as well. If anybody's interested in the data of that, I'm happy to share how that pre-outreach visual inspection went. And then restaurant outreach. So this is going to be a few months out still, just in terms of the programming that we have going right now. But the goal with this is we've done several surveys between our community members and our local businesses or local restaurants to learn more about what the current situation is with takeout disposable items. So it could be the containers, it could be the bags, the drinking straws, lots of different things that are associated with food. So we've collected a lot of information on the current situation, on consumer preferences. The next step with this is to launch the outreach. So there is more to come on this. In addition to, so I think Joan had asked me, where is support needed here? Along those lines of the restaurant outreach, like I said, we're in the early planning of that right now. But one of the things that we're considering is if we were to have these different types of sustainable alternative materials at certain restaurants. One of the things that would really value the program is having restaurant customer feedback. We are not completely sure what that is going to look like yet, but I mention that because that includes everybody on this call. We all interact with our local businesses, with our local restaurants. So if you see something come out in the next few months that's requesting feedback, I highly recommend that you participate in that, because again, that helps us to move programs forward, especially with this being that it involves our local restaurants, our local businesses. We want something that is going to work for them, and we want something that satisfies the consumers, satisfies their customers, because again, it's part of the business model. So any feedback with that, with what comes out in the next several months for that, we would appreciate. This is one we all know. You've already heard me say it in this talk. Reducing food waste at home, though, I cannot emphasize that enough. Not only from, again, what we've seen with what's going into our landfill, a large amount of food waste, but also we've got a lot of focus in this community on climate action. And reducing food waste is one of the best things we can do to, build climate action locally to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We talked about it in terms of a biodegradable item, but that goes with food waste as well. If we've got food waste entering the landfill, that is organic material in an environment where there's no air, there's no light, that is the perfect breeding ground for methane production, which is a very, very potent greenhouse gas that we don't want to be producing. So with that, check out Love Food Fight Waste, check out that website. And if you have questions on how to access some of that information, reach out. And then finally, the other tip I have for you all is to stay informed. If you are not currently signed up for updates from the city, you can do so at this website, so icgov.org/subscribe. You don't need to get all updates. So you can choose what you want information on, what you want updates sent through your email. If you want police updates, if you want road closure, sure, you can sign up for that too. If you just want sustainability, if you just want curbside notices, you can check those boxes and that's all you will receive. So I mention this because this is really the best way to stay updated on our program changes. I send out usually several news releases per month on our programs. And it could also be simple things like there's a snowstorm and we had to suspend curbside composting today. Important updates like that, that are usually easiest to stay updated with via email versus sifting through a lot of other communication methods. So if you got more questions on that, let me know. All right. And then I've mentioned a few times, Reach out with questions. This is my contact information, email and phone. I understand, especially beyond the program today, we'll have some time here for questions as well. I can stick around. But beyond today, if there are things that pop up that you are not sure about, please reach out to me. I am your recycling coordinator. I meant to be a resource to you and help to answer those questions.